The rain pounded against the windshield like 1,000 tiny fists as Michael Turner pulled his truck to the side of the flooded road. Through the blur of water, he could make out a figure, a woman desperately trying to shield herself from the storm's fury. Little did Michael know that this simple act of kindness would change the course of his life forever. The woman he was about to help was Judge Eleanor Winters, the very same judge who would decide whether he kept custody of his daughter just 3 days later. Before we dive deeper into this incredible true story of fate and second chances, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories that remind us of the power of human connection. Your support helps us bring these inspiring tales to more viewers just like you. Michael Turner was a man who had learned to weather storms, both literal and metaphorical. At 34, his weathered face told the story of a man who had endured more than his fair share of hardship. His calloused hands gripped the steering wheel as he navigated through the torrential downpour that had transformed the familiar streets of Oak Ridge into treacherous rivers. The wipers of his aging Ford pickup struggled against the deluge, creating brief moments of clarity before the rain reclaimed its territory. In the passenger seat, 8-year-old Lily Turner clutched her backpack, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and excitement. "Dad, look! That lady needs help," she said, pointing toward a figure huddled beneath a bus shelter that offered little protection against the sideways rain. Michael squinted through the windshield. The woman was dressed in business attire, completely unsuitable for the biblical flood that had descended upon their small town. Her blazer was soaked through, and she clutched a leather briefcase to her chest like a shield. Even from a distance, Michael could see she was shivering. "You're right, sweetheart," he said, already angling the truck toward the curb. "We can't just leave her there." This was Michael's way, always ready to lend a hand, even when his own life was hanging by a thread. What Lily didn't know, what Michael tried desperately to shield her from, was that they were just days away from a custody hearing that threatened to tear them apart. After the death of Michael's wife, Sarah, 3 years ago, his mother-in-law had filed for custody of Lily, claiming that Michael's irregular work hours as a construction foreman and occasional financial struggles made him an unfit parent. The thought of losing Lily was unbearable. She was his world, the spitting image of her mother with the same chestnut hair and determined chin. In the years since Sarah's passing, they had formed a bond that went beyond the typical father-daughter relationship. They were survivors, a team. As Michael pulled up to the bus shelter, the woman looked up, relief washing over her face. He rolled down the window, rain immediately spattering the interior of the truck. "Need a ride?" he called out. The woman hesitated for just a moment, the natural caution of a woman alone, before nodding gratefully. "My car broke down about a mile back," she shouted over the howling wind. "I've been trying to get a signal to call for help, but nothing's working in this storm." "Hop in," Michael said, gesturing to the back seat. "We've got room." As the woman climbed into the truck, Michael caught a glimpse of her face in the rearview mirror. There was something vaguely familiar about her, but he couldn't place it. In a town the size of Oak Ridge, faces often seemed familiar even if you'd never formally met. "Thank you so much," she said, settling into the back seat. "I was beginning to think I'd be stranded there all night." "I'm Michael," he said. "And this is my daughter, Lily." "Hi." Lily chirped, twisting in her seat to get a better look at their passenger. "Your shoes are really pretty, even though they're all wet now." The woman laughed, a warm sound that filled the cab of the truck. "Thank you, Lily. I'm Eleanor." And yes, these shoes were definitely not made for wading through puddles. "Where can we take you, Eleanor?" Michael asked, pulling back onto the road, careful to avoid the deepest sections of water. "I live on Maple Ridge, but honestly, anywhere dry would be wonderful right now." Michael nodded. Maple Ridge was the affluent part of town, where the doctors, lawyers, and judges lived in houses that made his modest rental look like a shed. "We can get you there, no problem. The main road might be flooded, but I know a back way." As they drove, Lily chattered away, telling Eleanor about her school project on weather patterns, ironically due the next day, and how she had predicted this storm 3 days ago based on the cloud formations she'd been tracking. "You're quite the meteorologist," Eleanor remarked, genuine interest in her voice. "She gets her brains from her mom," Michael said softly, a hint of pride and sadness mingling in his voice. Eleanor caught his eye in the rearview mirror, a question there that she didn't voice. Instead, she asked Lily more about her project, and Michael was grateful for the distraction. The last thing he wanted was to break down in front of a stranger, especially with Lily watching. The truck lurched suddenly as Michael swerved to avoid a fallen branch. "Sorry about that," he said. "The roads are a mess." "You're doing great," Eleanor assured him. "I can't thank you enough for stopping. Most people would have just driven by." Michael shrugged. "That's not how I was raised. My dad always said that helping others isn't optional, it's what makes us human." "Your father sounds like a wise man." "He was," Michael said simply. The rain continued its assault as they wound through the back streets of Oak Ridge. Michael navigated carefully, aware of the precious cargo he carried, both his daughter and their unexpected passenger. The radio crackled with emergency alerts about flash flooding and road closures. "Looks like we might be in for a long night," Michael commented, turning the volume down. "They're saying the storm's not letting up until morning." Eleanor leaned forward, concern etching lines around her eyes. "I hope this isn't taking you too far out of your way." "Not at all," Michael assured her, though in truth, he had been heading home after picking Lily up from her after-school program. They had planned a quiet evening of pizza and board games, their Thursday tradition. But some things were more important than sticking to a schedule. As they approached a particularly flooded intersection, Michael slowed the truck to a crawl. Water lapped at the tires, threatening to rise above the wheel wells. "Dad, is it safe?" Lily asked, her earlier excitement giving way to apprehension. Michael assessed the situation, weighing their options. "I think we can make it through, but let's be sure." He turned to Eleanor. "Would you mind holding on to Lily for a minute? I want to check the depth." Without waiting for an answer, he pulled on a rain jacket that had seen better days and stepped out into the deluge. The cold water immediately soaked through his jeans as he waded into the intersection, testing the depth with each step. It was passable, just barely. When he returned to the truck, dripping wet but satisfied, he found Lily and Eleanor deep in conversation about the book Lily was reading for school. "We're good to go," he announced, shaking water from his hair like a dog. "It's not too deep, but hold on tight just in case." As they inched through the flooded intersection, Michael couldn't help but notice how at ease Lily seemed with Eleanor. His daughter was usually shy around strangers, a trait that had intensified after losing her mother. But something about Eleanor had broken through that reserve. "So, Eleanor," Michael ventured, "what do you do when you're not getting caught in biblical floods?" There was a slight pause before she answered. "I work in the legal system." "Like a lawyer?" Lily asked, eyes wide. Another pause. "Something like that." Michael nodded, focusing on the road. The legal system. That might explain why she seemed familiar. Perhaps he had seen her at the courthouse during one of his consultations with his attorney about the custody case. The thought of the upcoming hearing sent a fresh wave of anxiety through him. In just 3 days, a judge would decide whether he was fit to continue raising his own daughter. The very idea was absurd to Michael. He had rebuilt his entire life around Lily after Sarah's death, changed jobs to have more regular hours, moved to a better school district despite the higher rent, learned to cook more than just spaghetti and hot dogs. He wasn't perfect, but he loved his daughter fiercely and did everything in his power to give her a stable, loving home. But his mother-in-law, Margaret, saw only the struggles. She focused on the times he had to rely on after-school programs because his shift ran late, or the occasional past-due notice on a utility bill. She didn't see the bedtime stories, the science fair projects, the soccer games where he cheered until he was hoarse. She didn't understand that Lily was thriving despite the challenges they faced. You okay, Dad? Lily's voice pulled him from his thoughts. You're doing that thing with your eyebrows again. Michael forced a smile. Just concentrating on the road, sweetheart. Eleanor watched this exchange with interest, her eyes moving between father and daughter. There was something in her gaze that Michael couldn't quite decipher, assessment, perhaps, or simple curiosity. As they turned onto Maple Ridge, the rain began to ease slightly, as if the weather itself respected the affluent neighborhood enough to temper its fury. The houses here were set back from the road, protected by manicured lawns and ornamental trees. It's the blue house on the left, Eleanor directed. With the white columns. Michael pulled into the circular driveway of a stately colonial that made him acutely aware of the rust spots on his truck and the crack in the windshield he hadn't been able to afford to fix. This woman lived in an entirely different world from his. Thank you again, Eleanor said as the truck came to a stop. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't stopped. Probably caught pneumonia, Lily said matter-of-factly, making both adults laugh. Eleanor reached for the door handle, then hesitated. Would you both like to come in and dry off? I can make hot chocolate, and I'm sure I have some cookies somewhere. Michael was about to politely decline, they were already behind schedule, and Lily still had homework to finish, but his daughter's eyes lit up at the mention of hot chocolate. Can we, Dad? Please. He looked at Eleanor, who was smiling warmly. It's the least I can do, she said. Besides, the roads might be better if you wait a little while. Against his better judgment, Michael found himself nodding. Just for a little while, then. The interior of Eleanor's home was as impressive as the exterior, high ceilings, hardwood floors, and furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine. But despite its grandeur, it felt oddly impersonal, as if it were a showroom rather than a home. There were no family photos on the walls, no clutter of everyday life. The bathroom is down the hall if you'd like to dry off, Eleanor said, slipping off her ruined shoes. I'll get some towels. While Eleanor disappeared upstairs, Michael took in their surroundings. The house was immaculate but eerily quiet. No television humming in the background, no music, no signs of other occupants. Does she live here all by herself? Lily whispered, apparently having the same thought. I think so, sweetheart, Michael replied. When Eleanor returned with fluffy towels and 2 sets of dry clothes, sweatpants and t-shirts that she explained belonged to her brother who occasionally visited, Michael felt a twinge of embarrassment at accepting such hospitality from a stranger. But the thought of sitting in wet clothes while the storm raged on was enough to overcome his pride. After they had changed and Eleanor had prepared hot chocolate, complete with whipped cream and cinnamon, much to Lily's delight, they settled in the kitchen. It was the most lived-in room of the house, with cookbooks lining a small shelf and a few magnets on the refrigerator. So, Lily, Eleanor said, your dad mentioned you get your brains from your mom. Tell me about her. Michael tensed, but Lily's face lit up at the opportunity to talk about Sarah. She was the smartest person ever, Lily declared. She knew everything about stars and planets. She used to take me outside at night with her telescope, even when it was super cold, and show me constellations. Your mom was an astronomer? Eleanor asked. She taught astronomy at the community college, Michael explained. She loved sharing her passion with her students, and with Lily, of course. She sounds wonderful, Eleanor said softly. She was, Lily agreed, a hint of sadness creeping into her voice. She got sick when I was 5. Dad says she's watching over us from the stars now. Michael reached out to squeeze his daughter's hand. They had worked through their grief together, finding ways to keep Sarah's memory alive while learning to move forward. It hadn't been easy, but they had each other. Eleanor's expression was compassionate as she watched their interaction. It's clear you two have a special bond, she observed. He's the best dad ever, Lily stated with absolute conviction. Even when he burns the toast and forgets to check my math homework. Michael laughed, ruffling her hair. Thanks for the vote of confidence, kiddo. No, really, Lily insisted, turning to Eleanor. He works super hard so I can go to the good school, and he never misses my soccer games, and he learned how to braid hair from watching YouTube videos. Eleanor smiled. Those are important skills. And we're going to court on Monday because Grandma Margaret thinks I should live with her instead, but that's just silly because Dad and I are a team. Lily delivered this bombshell casually, as if discussing the weather. Michael froze, his cup halfway to his lips. They had agreed not to discuss the custody case with others, partly to protect Lily from the adult complexities, and partly because Michael was embarrassed that anyone could think him an unfit parent. Lily, he said gently, that's private family business. But it's stupid, Lily protested. Grandma Margaret has a big house and lots of money, but she doesn't know that I hate peas or that I need to read for exactly 12 minutes before I can fall asleep. Eleanor's expression had changed, becoming more guarded. I'm sure your grandmother loves you very much, she said carefully. She does, Michael acknowledged, feeling he needed to explain. My mother-in-law means well. She hasn't been able to move past her grief. Sarah was her only child, and I think in some ways, she blames me for not being able to save her. From cancer? Eleanor asked, her brow furrowing. Michael nodded. It was aggressive. By the time they caught it, there wasn't much anyone could do. He took a deep breath, surprised at himself for sharing such personal details with a stranger. Margaret thinks Lily would be better off with her. She can offer financial stability, private schools, summer camps, all the things I struggle to provide. But none of that matters, Lily interjected fiercely. I want to stay with Dad. Eleanor looked between them, her expression unreadable. And the hearing is on Monday? Yes, Michael confirmed, a weight settling in his chest. We've been preparing for months. My lawyer thinks we have a strong case, but... He trailed off, not wanting to voice his fears in front of Lily. I'm sure it will work out, Eleanor said, though her tone lacked conviction. The conversation shifted to lighter topics after that, but Michael couldn't shake the feeling that he had said too much. Eleanor was a stranger, after all, and here he was, spilling his most private worries. The storm continued outside, though with less intensity than before, and soon it was clear they had overstayed their welcome. We should get going, Michael said, standing up. Thank you for the hot chocolate and the dry clothes. We'll wash these and get them back to you. No rush, Eleanor assured him. And thank you again for the rescue. Not many people would have stopped. As they prepared to leave, Eleanor knelt down to Lily's level. It was lovely meeting you, Lily. Good luck with your weather project, I have a feeling it's going to be amazing. Lily beamed. Thanks. And thanks for the hot chocolate. It was way better than the kind Dad makes from the packets. Michael pretended to be offended, and they all laughed. The moment felt surprisingly comfortable, as if they had known Eleanor for years rather than hours. At the door, Eleanor handed Michael a business card. If you ever need anything, she said simply. Michael pocketed the card without looking at it, thanked her again, and ushered Lily back to the truck. The rain had subsided to a gentle drizzle, and the flooding on the roads had begun to recede. As they drove away, Michael glanced in the rearview mirror to see Eleanor standing in her doorway, watching them leave.